Live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Why, hello there and a welcome. Yep, here we go again. It's Monday. It's a cold Monday. My God, it's almost December. It's the 25th, excuse me, this Thanksgiving week. And obviously, this is going to be a shortened week for this program. There's no show on Thursday, and there will be no show on Friday. Anyway, you'll all be out there elbowing people aside at your various emporia, right? And trying to scarf up deals. I just don't comprehend why people would go out on Black, whatever that is, Friday. I mean, that'd be the one day. I suppose you could divide people into the people who can't wait to get into that fray and the people who wouldn't even consider it. And I'm definitely in the latter camp. Okay, so trying to think. I guess a lot of stuff happened over the weekend. Maybe we'll get into this Iran deal a little bit later. It's a little bit over my pay grade, and I'm still reading a lot about it, various points of view. Believe me, I mean, I've read some near hysterical points of view to some very, very supportive points of view. In both cases, written by intelligent, articulate human beings. So it brings us to that little bon mot that I exchanged with Potter on Friday, which of course I can't remember, but it had something to do with having an opinion. Jess, your supple young mind, do you remember that? It was about working hard to have that it's easy to have an opinion that you just sort of acquire from somebody else, and it's heavy lifting. But it was but I'll be damned if I. Yeah, I want the quote because I feel like I've been doing that. What I consider, a minimal. You can't find it.
I got it.
Okay, what is it?
Too often we enjoy comfort of opinion.
Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion
without the discomfort of thought.
Without the discomfort of thought. Yeah. Because it's easy to take on opinions. And it's also easy, if you're like me, you read a well-written screed of some sort, and the person seems to make perfect sense. The writer takes you from the A to B to C to D, and by the time you're done, you think, well, who could argue with that? And then if you continue to seek out information to arrive at your own opinion, you find another piece that is every bit as well written, articulate, A, B, C, D, E, and comes to a completely different conclusion. I think a lot of us have sort of go-to people that we go to. If so-and-so thinks it, I think it. And we all do that. We do, don't we? You certainly, over the years, decide to give more weight to certain people's opinions. And who I give weight to changes over time. But I still think in something like this, it's really important to read the people that you usually don't read, to just get it. It's a hugely complicated situation. But I'm leaning toward it's better. It's a positive thing that this deal has been struck. But man, am I on the to quote Ronald Reagan, trust but verify as well. But I don't want to get into that now, because there's easier things to talk about. And as I said, I'm still working on it. So what do we talk about? Let's talk about something easy like raking leaves. Now, I have brought this issue up many times in the past. I'm sure it's always around, well, probably a little earlier than this, because usually by now they're all gathered up and put away. But I had once come upon the most wonderful piece that had been written, and if any of you can find it, it would be great.
Today?
No. It's long ago. I mean, It's something about how, I think it's a piece about where God is looking down and looking at everybody raking the leaves and bundling them up. And that's my memory of it. And he says, what the hell are those idiots doing? What are they doing? It's part of it. And he explains how, the leaves fall, the leaves decompose, the leaves' nutrients go back into the ground. Then they give rise to, and it was a beautifully written piece. I think it also talked about lawn, all the crazy stuff we do, all the absurd things we do. And now because we do them and spew crap into the atmosphere while we're doing them, it's even more ridiculous and maybe even reprehensible, because all those leaf blowers, first of all, the pollution of the air from those things is amazing. Worse than a car, they are spewing so much carbon and crap into the air. It's unbelievable. But equally awful is the noise. Is it possible anywhere anymore in this country to, on a lovely autumnal Saturday morning or afternoon, to sit in your home, your feet up, reading a good book, or let's say even wanting to take a nap, without invariably one of those things getting turned on and I don't know what the decibel level is, but it's huge. It's like 20 jet planes taking off ad nauseum. And even if, it doesn't have to be your neighbor doing it, it can be a street over and 5 houses down. That's how loud it is. It is such a disruptor of the peace. I hate those things more than I can tell you. That's all I want to say. Anyway. So I was thrilled to come across a little piece today that says there's a slight movement afoot. God, thank God, thank God. Long time coming. But it's being spurred by, and I like this too, municipalities, governments of small towns, to start with, who, are dealing with budgets and are looking at how much it costs to pick up leaves that have been bagged by people and then trucking those leaves somewhere, and or often selling those leaves to a composting site that turns the leaves into, yes, mulch and parts of fertilizer. and then perhaps even sells it right back to a municipality. Who knows? It turns out it's so stupid on every level. So this article is from the New York Times, and so they're focusing on their region, and they're looking at little municipalities around them in Westchester County, for instance. And what is growing up is something called to leave the leaves in place. Leave them. Now, don't just leave them as they are, but mow them. Shred them through a special blade, which you can apparently put on an existing lawnmower, and shred them rather finely and leave them. Lo and behold, what happens is that they easily then decompose, quickly decompose, and they naturally provide nutrients and wondrous things for the lawns on which they are decomposing. And they also then allow the ground underneath to retain more water. So you don't have to sprinkle as much water in the summer. You know, once you start doing something that is environmentally intelligent, one thing leads to another where you see, oh, I'm not only now saving all of this, schlepping of leaves away from here, then going and buying, let's say, fertilizer in the spring, or buying composting, or buying mulch, when the leaves themselves can provide all of that. It's a gift. Free. And the only thing that's driving the insanity of what we do with leaves is this idea that we want our lawns to look, like these pristine carpets. I hate those pristine carpets. They look stupid. Hello, caller.
How you doing today?
I am doing fine. Thank you very much.
What you're talking about is mulching them.
Yeah.
Which I do every year.
Good for you.
And then you get yourself a cordless blower, which is these lithium batteries, and you don't have to use gasoline. But we got a problem here in my township with these people. They burn. They burn the leaves.
You can't do that.
They burn all the time. You'll get a day where it's really hot and people will burn. You get up in the morning, you stinks like hell. They don't give a shit. And you know who the people are doing it?
No.
These elderly 80-some-year-olds.
Because they used to do that. That's what they know.
And they just cannot get away from that.
Well, when I was a little kid, I used to love burning leaves because we would also roast marshmallows and stuff. I loved it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, those days are gone. I thought that was against the law. I mean, they should be talk about pollution again.
No, our township allows it, and
oh, really?
I wish they'd ban it. But
yeah.
What are you going to do?
Okay.
We'll see.
Thank you. So I mean, love them and leave them is what the new word to the wise is. Here's a guy who owns a landscaping company, and he says making the leaves into mulch that you can do yourself is such a no-brainer. He says it is utterly insane to pay for or to labor at gathering them up, putting them in something, trucking them away. Whether you do it or you don't, or somebody else does it, in terms of somebody else doing it, the cost of it, plus all that pollution that is created. And he says it's utterly insane to be driving this stuff miles and miles away. My feeling is that if I'm taking away your leaves, I'm stealing from you. So it is true, and this guy owns a nursery. He says, commercial firms use all those leaves as raw materials to produce mulch and compost that they then will sell right back to you. It's okay. And this, the thing about when I drive onto my street, there's one house that's always, there's people blowing one leaf falls and 3 guys with motors on their back show up. Ah! And so it looks now, their trees are bare and there's this barren look. I'm sorry. I got some leaves lots of leaves in my yard at the moment. And guess what that looks like? That looks like nature. When did nature become something we consider untidy or unpleasant? I think we're insane. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
That's a battle people have been fighting for years, and it's just ridiculous. It's trying to exert control over something you cannot control. It's a fruitless task. Parenthetically to what you're talking about with the leaves, I would like to recommend 2 books, 1491 and 1493. They're books about North America before Columbus and North America after Columbus.
Okay.
And there's an interesting thing about leaves in the 1493. There were no earthworms in North America before Columbus.
No. Are you kidding me? That's such a basic form of organism.
Isn't it? It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, come on. Are they sure about that? Are you sure about that?
I'm absolutely positive. And it has been a detriment to our forests because they break the leaves down too quickly.
Oh.
Those leaves are meant to fall and lay on the forest floor and create a cover for it. And it's healthier for the root systems. It's healthier for everything underneath those leaves. Yeah, there were no earthworms, no honeybees, many things.
Well, wait, there had to be.
Those books to people, and
how could there not be honeybees? There had to be honeybees.
No, they were brought from Europe. There are hundreds of insects to pollinate, but honeybees were brought from Europe.
Okay.
God knows.
Okay.
And there were it's amazing. And when I heard about the earthworms, I was like, you have to be kidding me. I thought they would just take them for granted, And actually out in where you're from, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and places like that, there's a movement to get rid of earthworms. And as a matter of fact, they talk to people about when they're composting, if they use worms, to be very careful not to let those earthworms
multiply,
travel in their dirt and things like that to other places.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
So yeah,
I thought that were
1491 and 1493 of the books. They're written by Mann, M-A-N-N, Charles Mann.
Okay. Wow! Thank you.
Hi.
Wow, that's mind-boggling. Now, one thing that had made sense to me, and I guess why even this love 'em and leave 'em movement, I wish it all the best, suggests that you do run over them with these mulching mowers, these ones that will break them down so that they do decompose faster. My understanding is that you don't necessarily want, and this goes against that lovely little thing I wish somebody would find about the God looking down at us and thinking, what the hell are they doing? But when a bunch of leaves are blanketed on the ground, that I have been told by some people who insist that you do have to get rid of them, that what they do, because they don't decompose very quickly at all, is that they create a mat that then doesn't allow water to get through to the ground and all this stuff. That's what I was told. And that's why you have to, chew them up a little bit. But I do have a friend who almost every year has said to me, when she has seen me bagging, could I have those? And she has often relieved me of numerous bags of leaves because she knew this long ago. She used them for mulch. So, just telling you. And I'm glad to hear that people are maybe thinking about it. But I have to tell you, one of the things that's so stark about the winter urban landscape or suburban landscape is the fact of all of those incredibly clean, barren lawns. And I think they'd look better with a little bit of natural cover. It just looks too clean, too unnatural. But I guess it's very human to want to tame nature or manage it in some way. I mean, and we do as much as we can often. Joseph writes, how the lowly earthworm changed the face of America forever after being brought over by early European colonists along with chickens, malaria, and the common cold. Well, so that's 2 for 2, huh? Earthworms and chickens, okay, I'll take them. Malaria and the common cold, not so sure. I always thought of the earthworm as an obviously wondrous, beneficial, could never be a negative. So that's stunning. Well, this is what I like. That's why I love talking to you guys, because you make me a little bit smarter and a lot more curious then. The caller said something about Wisconsin, Minnesota. Interesting piece that was in the Times, I think on Sunday, also made it into Jared Day's Daily News Nuggets, I noticed. And it's titled Right versus Left in the Midwest and suggests that, that we should take a break before I get into this. Okay. And then as soon as we return, back up, we go to this area that people, in which people talk like this. Okay? We'll be right back.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Dr. John Watson here. My friend Sherlock Holmes and I would like to invite you to Pict Theatre for The Crucifer of Blood, one of our most thrilling mysteries that features a treasure chest of jewels and a deadly curse. The Charity Randall Theatre in Oakland, December 4th through 21st. Tickets at 412-561-6000 or picttheatre.org. There's no place like Holmes for the holidays.
Download the CP Haps app to find out what's happening in Pittsburgh. It's the fun and free app that puts the most popular events at your fingertips. Text EVENTS to 77948 to download now. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Brought to you by Pittsburgh City Paper.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okie doke. So the article goes, starts by pointing out that Wisconsin and Minnesota, these two states that are right next to each other, bordering on Canada and the upper Midwest, that they share a lot of things in common. They're unbelievably freezing winters, the same kind of people populating them. And an extraordinarily populist and progressive tradition politically. Of course, that could be said of Wisconsin until just recently when, inexplicably to my badger brain, these Yahoo conservative Republicans gained control of the Wisconsin legislature and the governorship. One Scott Walker, who is positioning himself, by the way, to be considered the adult in the room on the loony Republican side for the nomination in 2016, if they can't bear to go with somebody like Chris Christie. He's whatever. I don't even want to get into that. Okay, but believe me, there are people in Wisconsin, which is still like a 50-50 state. It's a purple state. Went for Obama in both presidential elections, but always proud of this progressivism. Minnesota, even though Michelle Bachmann comes from there, inexplicably too, also has this extraordinary tradition. I mean, the Progressive Party was founded in Wisconsin. The guy who founded it, La Follette, was the governor of the state, fighting Bob La Follette. Next door in Minnesota, there was always a party, and it still exists. And in fact, the governor there now is a member of that party. It's like the Democratic Party. That's the first words of its title, but it's got a longer title. The Democratic Farmer Labor Party. That is a party, as far as I know, that is unique to Minnesota and has been up and active throughout my lifetime, and I'm sure well before it. So the piece says you can almost let's look at these two states that are, like they said, cousins. They're so much alike. But one, in the last 6 years, has gone over to the dark side politically, Wisconsin. And Minnesota actually has, throughout its Republican governor, a guy named Pawlenty, and elected a guy named Mark Dayton, who is one of the more progressive, if not the most progressive governor in the 50 states. So this piece just looks at what has happened in those states since Mark Dayton, the progressive, took over in Minnesota, and Scott Walker, the took over in Wisconsin. Oh, this won't shock any Republicans. Minnesota raised taxes like that by over $2 billion, the largest increase in recent state history. And guess what? Those taxes targeted the top 1% of Minnesotans, who the top 1% will be paying 62% of those taxes. Get that. The 1% that usually make off with 62% of all of everything that's created in this country. Now in Minnesota, the 1% are also going to have to kick in 62% of those new taxes. Now, believe me, nothing like that happened in Wisconsin. Wisconsin went the other way. And let's look at where both states stand since these two, the right-winger and the left-winger, have taken over. Walker, like all good right-wing Republicans, ran on a promise to produce private sector jobs. He said he was going to produce 250,000 of private sector jobs for the people of Wisconsin in his first term. Guess how many he's managed? 87,000. Okay. In fact, Wisconsin, under Walker, ranks 34th in job growth in the United States. Forbes, that makes up these lists of best states for business, says Wisconsin is in the bottom half. Minnesota with the progressive governor and that awful taxation increase, the 5th fastest state economy, growing economy in the country. And Forbes now rates Minnesota as the 8th best state for business, which is mind-boggling given that they've gone after the 1%. They have a high corporate tax rate. Still, Forbes rates Minnesota as the 8th best state for business. What else can I tell you? Oh, and here's another thing. So you got this progressive in Minnesota running. And all the revenue that has come in, he's put it into human capital. Now, he's got a constitution like most states have a constitution, and it has to be the budget has to be balanced. He has balanced the budget with the money, and all of the rest of it, which accounts to 71% of the remaining funds, guess what he's done with it? He's put it in to K through 12 public education, as well as creating all-day kindergarten, wider access to early childhood education. In fact, Minnesota was one of just a handful of states that managed to raise education spending under the recent recession. Look at what happened here under a Republican governor. At the very same time, Minnesota was managing to buttress public education to help children get a good start. Everybody knows that's how you do it. Corbett and his crowd were taking money away from education. Healthcare, of course, like Corbett, Governor Walker in Wisconsin refused to expand Medicare, Medicaid, refused to establish a state health insurance exchange. And next door in Minnesota, Dayton, the progressive, of course, did both of those things. He expanded Medicaid, covering tens of thousands of additional Minnesotans. He also created a state insurance exchange, which enrolled more than 90% of its first month's target. And the premiums for what you pay on the Minnesota Insurance Exchange are on average the lowest in the country. The same cannot be said of those in Wisconsin. Okay, so that's just a bit of what is available. And what's interesting is when you have, this is sort of like an experiment. Nobody intended it. It's not like the voters of Wisconsin and Minnesota got together and say, hey, let's run this experiment since we're both very similar states. You go right and I'll go left. And then let's check back in 4 or 5 years and see how we are. That's where we are. And in the hapless commonwealth that we reside in, we have, by virtue of also having this Republican legislature and governor, we appear to have followed the same path as Wisconsin with Walker. And would it not be for our fracking and natural gas, this Commonwealth right now would be going down at such a rate one couldn't even imagine. So, change the subject. Actually, let me check on our emails. I have been remiss. Bree writes, that the FCC head says he personally opposes cell phone use. Who the hell in their right mind doesn't oppose cell phone use? And one thing that I did find out over the weekend was that even if the FCC says nah, it's okay. You can use cell phones in the air. It doesn't mean that individual airlines have to allow it. Individual airlines set the rules of what goes on their planes. And I guess Delta has already said they're against it. And I can't imagine any airline, unless one wants to be like the airline that flies all the gabbers. Maybe one will agree to do it or allow a slight bit of who knows what. I don't know. There is such an overwhelming. I am so happy to have found this out, that I'm not alone. An overwhelming response to this suggestion, and invariably negative. PJ, bless you. Thank you. I won't lose this again. I'm going to print it out. Oh, this is on lawns. Okay, it's not on leaves are part of it. He found it. Can I read this to you? I so love this. This is to imagine the conversation that the creator might have had with St. Francis, let's say. Could be anybody, on the subject of lawns. He's talking to, you have to have a dialogue here. So God's asking St. Francis these questions. Here's God. Hey, Francis, you know all about gardens and nature. What in the world is going on down there? What happened? What happened to the dandelions, the violets, the thistle and stuff I planted eons ago? I had a perfect no-maintenance garden plan. Those plants grow in any type of soil. They withstand drought, and they multiply with abandon. I mean, the nectar from those long-lasting blossoms attracts butterflies, honeybees, and flocks of songbirds. I expected to see a vast garden of colors by now, but all I see are these green rectangles. By the way, I'm sure God doesn't sound like that, but, who knows? St. Francis responds, well, it's the tribes that settled there, Lord, the suburbanites. They started calling your flowers weeds and went to great lengths to kill them and replace them with grass. God responds, grass? Grass? But it's so boring. It's not colorful. It doesn't attract butterflies, birds, bees. It attracts grubs and sodworms. It's temperamental with temperature. I mean, do these suburbanites really want all that grass growing there? St. Francis, apparently so, Lord. They go to great pains to grow and keep it green. They begin each spring by fertilizing it and poisoning all the other plants that want to grow in the lawn. God. Well, the spring rains and warm weather probably make grass grow really fast. I mean, that must make the suburbanites happy, I guess. And St. Francis says, oh, no, apparently not, Lord. I mean, as soon as it grows even a little, they cut it. Sometimes twice a week. They cut it, says God. Well, okay, but then they bale it like hay? Not exactly, Lord. Most of them rake it up and then put it in bags. They put it, well, why? Is it a cash crop? I mean, do they sell it? No, sir. Actually, just the opposite. They pay to have it thrown away. God is actually, for a moment, dumbfounded and speechless. Wait, God says now let me get this straight. They fertilize grass, so when it does grow, they then cut it off and pay to throw it away. Yes, sir. These suburbanites, God says, must be, at least relieved in the summer then when we cut back on the rain and turn up the heat. I mean, that surely slows the growth and save them lots of work. Lord, you're not going to believe this. When the grass stops growing so fast, they drag out hoses and then they pay more money to water the grass so they can continue to mow it and pay to get rid of it. God. Oy. What nonsense. Well, at least they kept some of the trees. That was a sheer stroke of genius, if I do say so myself. I mean, the trees grow leaves in the spring to provide beauty and shade, and in the autumn, leaves fall to the ground and form a natural blanket to keep moisture in the soil and protect the trees and bushes. And plus, as they decompose, the leaves form compost to enhance the soil. It's the natural circle of life. St. Francis. You better sit down, Lord. The suburbanites have drawn a new circle of life. As soon as the leaves fall, they rake them into great piles and pay to have them hauled away. No, says God, no! Well, what do they do to protect the shrub and tree roots in the winter and to keep the soil moist and loose? Well, Lord, now, after throwing away the leaves, they go out and they buy something which they call mulch. Then they haul that home and spread it around in place of the leaves. God says, and where do they get this mulch? St. Francis says they cut down trees and grind them up to make the mulch. All right, enough, says God. I don't want to think about this anymore. Sister Catherine, you're in charge of the arts. What movie have you scheduled for us tonight? Dumb and Dumber, Lord. There it is. We'll take a break.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Just in time for the holidays, Little's Shoes is your UGG headquarters. Little's has the largest selection of UGGs for men, women, and children to stay warm with shearling-lined boots, shoes, and slippers. Don't forget to get your hats, gloves, scarves, and more. Bring the entire family to view one of the largest in-store UGG shops in the U.S. All available at Little's Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store. Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill or littleshoes.com.
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Go to the all-new BergBargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Log on now for great deals from Ibiza, Atria's Verde, the Improv Comedy Club, and City Theater. The all-new BergBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains, BergBargains.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Carmen, thank you as well. I see that you found that for me and it sent it in. Okay, well, I've been sent more on earthworms, but I'll okay. I'll leave that just for a moment, if you don't mind. I want to point out a letter to the editor, which I loved, and which I loved in part. I first of all, I talked to you about this on last week. That something that hasn't gotten a lot of play in our wonderful media, but should have, and that is this ACLU report about the unbelievably, what this letter calls scandalous incarceration fetish in the United States. That this country imprisons so many more of its citizens than any other country, and we keep them in there ever for things that other places would just, maybe give me a $10 and go on your way and don't do that again. We keep people in for life for crimes that were not violent, that where they're no threat to the community. We are insane. And we're destroying lives. So this letter says, and I had pointed out that President, I'm demoting him, that President Obama, I have noticed, just doesn't use his ability to pardon. He has used it less, I think, than any modern president. This letter writer points out that Harry Truman pardoned his first prisoner 8 days after taking office. Truman knew what an incredible, talk of being able to be sort of autocratic. You have the right to literally free a person with a stroke of your pen. You're out. You're done. You did your thing. Get out. Within 8 days, Truman does it. I don't know how many he eventually ended up pardoning, but Barack Obama, he's in his 5th year, almost done with his 5th year. He has pardoned all of 39 people, and get this, really only 14 people. 14, because all those others, 25 of the people that he did somehow get around to pardoning, were people who had been sentenced to probation. So they weren't in jail. His pardon didn't mean freedom to them. His pardon meant they could, expunge their criminal record. But he has left languishing in prison untold numbers of people who could and should be sprung. This guy says it is time for the president to take more seriously not only his constitutional power, but also his duty to leaven with mercy our often indefensible system of criminal justice. Now, the president's power to pardon only relates to those who are federal prisoners. But he just simply has not used it. And I don't know why. I know he's a busy person. But that could be wouldn't that be a wondrous thing to be able to do? There are so many, I can't imagine how many thousands of people who have served more than they ever should have, and are looking at maybe serving 10s, 20s, 30 more years or life. And you could. Barack, you could. And if you're worried that, the Republicans, of course, will jump all over you. One more thing on Barack. It was upsetting, but I'm going to share it with you. I find this very upsetting. It's not something he said. It's something that was said about him, but by somebody who knows him very, very well. One of his most trusted advisors. Why can't I find it? And it was in a book written by David Remnick, who is an editor of the New Yorker magazine. This book is called The Life and Rise of Barack Obama. Actually, it's called The Bridge, The Life and Rise of Barack Obama. And I got this from reading George Will's column. Of course, he would pluck this out. But I'm not going to disagree with it. He's quoting Valerie Jarrett, who has been an advisor to Barack Obama since he was a state senator in Illinois and has been with him throughout his extraordinary rise and remains with him in the White House as one of his most, without a doubt, probably maybe the most trusted advisor. He totally trusts this woman, knows she knows him, knows she cares, knows she loves him, blah, 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 and that goes both ways. But amazingly, here is what she says. She was quoted in this book about him. And I find this quote. Here it is. Valerie Jarrett speaking about Barack Obama. He knows exactly how smart he is. I think that he has never really been challenged intellectually. He's been bored to death his whole life. He's just too talented to do what ordinary people do. He would never be satisfied with what ordinary people do. Now, if someone wants to find the entire quote, it is on, because I see there's a few little, those are ellipses, right? In between a few. So, I mean, George Will might have pulled out something that slightly or ameliorates some of the bad taste which this quote leaves in my mouth. But if anyone has the book, The Bridge, it's on page 274, the quote. And I thank George Will for very helpfully telling us that. So if you want to see what was left out, you can see what was left out. But ultimately, and I mean, this is not Barack Obama speaking. He's not saying, I have been bored all my life. I'm intellectually superior to everything. I don't do what ordinary people do. I would go insane doing what ordinary people. He didn't say that. But this woman who is like as close to him as close can be said it. And I find that quote very unsettling. Because I'll tell you, I have in my life, I know I have, met and spent time with extraordinarily intelligent people, ingenious people, people like Barack Obama who have Harvard law degrees and who are, just ingenious, and people, even autodidacts who don't have a degree but know absolutely everything, hungry minds, amazing people. And I'll tell you, this could be on Valerie and not on Barack, but to say he's been bored to death his whole life because what? Anything any of us say is like, oh, come on, I thought of that 20 minutes ago. He would have to be the biggest jerk in the universe if this is right. Because you cannot be as smart as she says he is and think that you can't learn something from ordinary people who she seems to be just dissing. Oh, he's not an ordinary person. Well, fine and dandy. Yes, he is, clearly, very much an extraordinary person. And I know other extraordinary people. And it doesn't mean you have to look down your nose at ordinary, because ordinary often informs those who are extraordinary. If you're up there with your intelligence, that you're just bored by... I mean, who doesn't get bored by a lot of people? Some people, they just natter on, and they're boring. That's true. And maybe the smarter you are, the more boring some people may be. But some of the most boring people I've ever known are brilliant people. Boring doesn't have to do with... I just find that quote so disgusting. And all I know, and I don't know anything about Valerie Jarrett, but now I know I don't like her. But that she's the president's best friend, and this is how she perceives him, and this is how she would talk about him, it plays into, I see why George Will quoted it, it absolutely plays in to the part of him that a lot of people sense and don't like. The aloofness, the coolness, I'm sorry, I just can't be slapping people on the back and having idle conversation with people. And if what she's doing is giving us a little peek at a part of him that frankly is not an attractive part, that quote so blew me away. I'm still rattled. I'm still rattled by it. Just sharing it with you. I don't know what the hell she thought she was saying, or why the hell she would say it. I've often talked about my ingenious brother, and he is just a ridiculous genius. And you know what? You know who he likes to spend time with? Ordinary people. That's exactly who he spends time with. He can't stand people that would say something like that. It makes his skin crawl. Okay. And I'm sorry to have bothered you with any of that, if in fact you didn't want to hear it. That might have been the first time I quoted George Will in a million years. But there it is. So we were talking about, I watched football yesterday. I'm always squawking and screaming about the violence of the game and how it isn't going to survive, and I'll stand by all of that, but I'm still a child of Green Bay, and so I watch the Steelers, great game. I watched the Packers, miserable game. They played to a tie. That never happens. Anyway, had a little conversation with my son about the kind of advertising that shows up on football games, because it's quite clear who advertisers think the demographic is. And if you're a woman who enjoys watching football, there is not one ad that is aimed at you. Not a single ad. It is if only men with erectile dysfunction watch football games. Sometimes who?
Sometimes they have the lady clothing line.
The lady clothing line?
Alyssa Milano has a NFL.
Okay, no, that I missed that one. Okay, but so what are they at? Pickup trucks, beer, low T. You know how many men apparently can't get it up now? I mean, it is amazing when you see the sales, the sales of all of those drugs. You got to realize then that men, sorry guys, but now we're on to you. You can't get it up. And you know what? I got to tell you something else. A lot of women of a certain age love the fact that you aged along with us and couldn't get it up anymore. And you were finally not pestering them anymore for sex. They can't procreate. They can't. The women can't. And Viagra and Cialis and all that is the bane of so many women's existence. For some women, I'm sure they're thrilled. But there are many women, I have to tell you, who are thinking, oh, no. Oh, jeez. It was so great when he couldn't get it up. Damn. And then, here's what I read a piece. There are a few things out where they're starting to, warn people that there have been, a lot of guys take testosterone and all that stuff too. Low T. That's the low T one, right? And they're saying that this is running so far out ahead of any studies that have been done on what the possible long-term effects are of doing this stuff. Anyway, so the marketers, there was a guy who actually sat and cataloged all the advertising in a football game. And he says he knew there were a lot of ads, but he was blown away by how many. There are well over 100 ads per game. It's mostly ads. Erectile dysfunction. Other, also car insurance, credit cards, all the, anyway. And the bottom line for all of the ads is male insecurity. You can't get it up. On top of that, you're driving a car that says you're a wuss. Right? Oh. So, I think that's it, guys, because as I was looking over at the clock, it appears to have hit the top of the hour, which means I'm out of here. Lots of things to talk about still. I got stuff we'll hold in abeyance for tomorrow, and Susan will join me to put in her 2 cents worth, which is often worth listening to. And meanwhile, you have a great day. Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.